Nokia did not lose because people stopped needing phones. Nokia lost because the meaning of a phone changed. For years, Nokia was the safest answer in technology. If you wanted the phone that survived drops, lasted for days, worked almost anywhere, and did exactly what it promised, you bought a Nokia. It was not just a brand. It was a habit. A Nokia phone could be in a teenager's pocket, a taxi driver's glove box, a business traveler's briefcase, a construction worker's hand, or a family drawer years after it was supposed to be obsolete. People trusted Nokia because Nokia phones felt like tools. Durable, familiar. Practical, everywhere. At its peak, Nokia was not chasing the phone industry. Nokia was the phone industry. The company had scale, factories, carrier relationships, global distribution, engineers, patents, brand recognition, and one of the strongest positions any consumer technology company had ever built. Then the smartphone war arrived. And Nokia, the company that had helped make mobile phones global, lost the market that came after mobile phones. Not because it had no engineers. Not because it had no money. Not because it had no brand. Not because it never saw smartphones coming. That is the uncomfortable part. Nokia had smartphones before the iPhone. Nokia had mobile internet ideas before most consumers understood mobile internet. Nokia had cameras, music phones, business phones, app platforms, maps, messaging, and global reach. But the future did not reward the company that had the most phone experience. It rewarded the companies that understood phones were becoming software platforms. That was the shift Nokia struggled to survive. The old phone war was about devices. The new smartphone war was about ecosystems. And Nokia was built to win the old war almost perfectly. That is why it lost the new one. To understand the fall, we first have to understand why Nokia became so powerful. Nokia's rise was not an accident of nostalgia. The company solved the real problem at a global scale. In the 1990s and early 2000s, mobile phones were moving from luxury devices to everyday tools. People did not just want something futuristic. They wanted something reliable, something simple, something that could survive real life. Nokia understood that better than almost anyone. Its phones had strong battery life, clear menus, good reception, durable bodies, replaceable covers, familiar keypads, affordable models for emerging markets and premium models for professionals. Nokia did not design only for Silicon Valley or Tokyo or London. It designed for the world. That mattered. In many countries, the first personal digital device people ever owned was not a computer. It was a Nokia. Before apps, before touchscreens, before social media feeds, the phone was already becoming personal. It held contacts, text messages, alarms, games, photos, ringtones, reminders, and identity. Nokia gave that personal device a form people could trust. The company also mastered segmentation. There was not one Nokia phone. There were many. Tiny phones, business phones, fashion phones, camera phones, music phones, rugged phones, cheap phones, expensive phones, phones for teenagers, phones for executives, phones for markets where price mattered more than design, phones for markets where design mattered more than price. This was one of Nokia's great strengths. It could flood the market with models for every customer, every carrier, every region, and every price point. That was not chaos in the old world. That was dominance. Because the old mobile phone market was fragmented. Operators wanted different devices. Regions had different needs. Customers had different budgets. Networks varied. Distribution was complex. Nokia's machine could handle that complexity. Its supply chain was powerful. Its manufacturing scale was enormous. Its relationships with telecom operators were deep. Its brand was trusted across rich markets and emerging markets at the same time. That is very rare. Most technology companies are either premium or mass market. Nokia was both. A high-end Nokia could feel advanced. A cheap Nokia could feel indestructible. A business Nokia could feel professional. A basic Nokia could feel like the most dependable object in your life. That was the magic. Nokia did not simply sell phones. It sold reliability at global scale, and the numbers showed it. By late 2007, Nokia's estimated device market share reached about 40%. That is almost impossible to imagine today. In a global hardware market, one company was selling roughly 4 out of every 10 mobile phones. That kind of dominance changes how a company sees reality. When you are that large, the market looks like something you manage, not something that can suddenly escape you. Nokia had another advantage. It already understood that phones were getting smarter. This is important because the lazy version of the story says Nokia missed smartphones. That is not really true. Nokia had Symbian. It had Series 60. It had devices that could run apps, browse the web, use email, take photos, play music, and do many things ordinary phones could not. Nokia was one of the pioneers of smartphones, but it understood smartphones through the logic of the old phone world. That was the trap. For Nokia, a smartphone was still mostly a better phone. For Apple, the iPhone was closer to a pocket computer with a phone inside it. That difference changed everything. Before the iPhone, many smartphones were complicated. They had small screens, physical keyboards, styluses, menu layers, carrier customizations, and interfaces that made sense to people who were willing to learn them. Nokia was good at that world. It had devices for power users. It had business phones. It had multimedia phones. It had phones with impressive hardware features. It had one of the largest smartphone platforms in the world, but the experience was not simple enough. Symbian had been built for a different era. Limited memory, limited processing power, carrier requirements, many hardware configurations, and a world where the phone's main job was still phone-like. It was technically capable. But it was not built for the coming up first, touch first, developer first world. This is where Nokia's strength began to become weakness. Nokia had too many models, too many software variants, too many internal platforms, too many operator demands, too many product categories, too many layers between idea and execution. In the old market, that flexibility helped Nokia serve everyone. In the smartphone market, it slowed Nokia down, because the new war did not reward having 1,000 phones. It rewarded having one platform developers cared about. That was the difference. When Apple introduced the iPhone in 2007, many people underestimated it. And in the short term, that was understandable. The first iPhone was expensive. It lacked some features other phones had. It did not immediately dominate global volume. It was not built for every region or every price point. It was not yet the entire smartphone revolution. From Nokia's perspective, the iPhone could look like a premium niche device. Beautiful, yes. Dangerous, maybe. But not yet a reason to panic. Nokia still sold far more phones. Nokia still had carrier relationships. Nokia still had global distribution. Nokia still had emerging markets. Nokia still had Symbian. Nokia still had the scale Apple did not. That is why disruption is so dangerous. At first, the new thing can look smaller than the old empire. The threat is not obvious in unit volume. The threat is in the new definition it creates. The iPhone changed what people expected from a phone. The screen became the center. The browser became real. Touch became natural. Software became the experience. The phone became a platform for services. Then the App Store made the shift even bigger. A phone was no longer only what the manufacturer built into it. A phone became what developers could add to it. That broke the old model. Nokia had been excellent at creating many finished products. Apple created a product that could keep becoming new after purchase. That is a different kind of power. Then Android arrived and made the shift impossible to ignore. Android gave other manufacturers a way to compete with the iPhone without building a full operating system from scratch. Samsung, HTC, Motorola, LG, and many others could enter the smartphone war with a shared software foundation and Google services behind them. This attacked Nokia from both ends. Apple attacked the high end with integration, design, and premium experience. Android attacked the middle and eventually the low end with scale, variety, and rapid improvement. Nokia was squeezed between a focused premium ecosystem and an open mass market ecosystem. That was the nightmare. Because Nokia's old advantage had been serving every segment. Now, every segment was being redefined by software. At the high end, consumers wanted touchscreens, beautiful interfaces, browsers, apps, and constant updates. At the mid-range, Android manufacturers moved fast and copied what worked. At the low end, cheap smartphones began to replace feature phones. Nokia's core market did not disappear in one day. It was eaten layer by layer. And the company's response was not simple. Nokia tried. It improved Symbian. It worked on MeeGo. It built touchscreen devices. It made strong hardware. It had talented designers. It had mapping assets. It had cameras that were often ahead of the market. It had real innovation inside the company. This is not a story where everyone at Nokia was asleep. The problem was that Nokia's innovation was trapped inside an organization built for a different game. A beautiful camera phone could not fix the ecosystem problem. A clever hardware feature could not fix developer momentum. A new model could not fix platform fragmentation. A strong brand could not fix a weak app story. A global sales channel could not fix software that fell behind. The smartphone war was not just about making a better device. It was about making the phone part of a living software economy. Developers had to believe in the platform. Users had to expect apps. Services had to connect. Updates had to arrive. The interface had to feel modern. Hardware and software had to be designed together. Nokia had pieces. Apple and Android had systems. That is why Nokia's decline accelerated. The first red flag was user experience. Nokia could still produce powerful phones, but many of them felt complicated compared to the iPhone. The menus, settings, app experience, browser, and touch interaction did not feel like the future to ordinary users. The second red flag was developers. A platform becomes stronger when developers believe their work will reach users easily and make money. Apple created a simple target. Android created massive reach. Nokia had Symbian, but Symbian was fragmented and difficult. Developers had to think about device differences, platform versions, screen sizes, input methods, and inconsistent experiences. That friction matters. Developers do not only follow market share, they follow momentum. The third red flag was speed. Nokia was enormous, but enormous companies can become slow because every decision touches too many groups. Hardware teams, software teams, regional teams, operator relationships, product lines, legacy platforms, and internal politics all had to align. Apple did not sell many models. It sold focus. Android did not have one hardware strategy. It had ecosystem speed. Nokia had scale, but scale became weight. Then came the moment when the company itself admitted the platform was burning. In 2011, CEO Stephen Elop's internal burning platform memo became public. The language was dramatic, but the diagnosis was important. Nokia was not only fighting devices, it was fighting ecosystems. That was the clearest statement of the new reality. The phone war was no longer about who could make the best hardware lineup. It was about who could attract developers, services, users, partners, and attention into a platform that kept improving. Nokia had to choose. It could stay with Symbian and try to modernize. It could push MeeGo and build its own new platform. It could join Android, or it could partner with Microsoft and bet on Windows Phone. Nokia chose Microsoft. In theory, the logic was understandable. Nokia needed a modern smartphone platform. Microsoft needed a serious hardware partner. Windows Phone had a distinctive interface. Microsoft had money, software, experience, developer tools, Xbox, Office, Bing, and a desire to compete with Apple and Google. Together, they could become the third ecosystem. That was the bet. Not first, not second, third. But the problem with ecosystems is that third place is not a safe place unless it has momentum. Developers were already choosing iOS and Android. Consumers were already learning those platforms. Carriers were already watching demand move. App makers had limited resources. Accessories, services, media coverage, and cultural excitement were already forming around Apple and Android. Nokia and Microsoft were not trying to launch a phone. They were trying to reverse gravity. And gravity was moving against them. The Windows Phone Lumia devices were not bad in the simple sense. Some were beautifully designed. Some had excellent cameras. Some had bold colors. Some had strong hardware. The interface was different and sometimes praised, but being good was not enough. A smartphone platform had to answer the question every user asked, even if they did not say it out loud. Will this phone have the apps, services, updates, and future I expect? For too many people, the answer was uncertain. That uncertainty killed momentum. The app gap became a psychological problem. Even if a user did not need every app, the perception that the platform was missing important apps made the phone feel risky. Buying an iPhone or Android felt like joining the main road. Buying Windows Phone felt like betting on a road that might not be finished. That is deadly in consumer technology. People do not only buy what works today, they buy what they believe will still matter tomorrow. Nokia had once been the safest choice. Now Nokia phones started to feel like the risky choice. That was the reversal. The brand built on trust had become uncertain. The collapse was not instant, but it was fast enough to shock the industry. Nokia's smartphone position weakened as Symbian declined faster than Lumia could rise. The company had to manage a transition where its old platform was being publicly abandoned before the new platform was strong enough to replace it. That created a brutal gap. Customers saw Symbian as the past. Windows Phone was not yet the future. Android was available now. The iPhone was desirable now. In technology, transition periods are dangerous because customers do not wait for your internal roadmap. They choose from what exists. And what existed was increasingly Apple and Android. Nokia's old machine could not protect it. Factories could not solve the app gap. Carrier relationships could not create developer excitement. Brand nostalgia could not make Symbian modern. Hardware quality could not make Windows Phone dominant. Scale could not restore a lost ecosystem. By 2014, Nokia completed the sale of its devices and services business to Microsoft. Think about what that meant. The company that had once ruled mobile phones sold a business that made it famous. Not because phones disappeared. Because the phone had become something Nokia could no longer control. That is the tragedy. Nokia did not lose a market where it was weak, it lost a market where it was strongest. And the human price was not abstract. Thousands of employees lived through layoffs, reorganizations, platform changes, and the emotional experience of watching a national champion lose its identity. In Finland, Nokia had been more than a company. It was a symbol of technological confidence. It showed that a small country could build a global consumer brand used by hundreds of millions of people. When Nokia fell, it was not just a corporate story. It was cultural. People who had spent careers building the world's most trusted phones saw the world move on. Engineers who had built real innovations watched the public reduce the story to Nokia missed the iPhone. Customers who had loved the brand watched it disappear from the center of daily life. Developers moved elsewhere. Retail shelves changed. The ringtone faded from public space. That is what decline looks like for a beloved technology company. Not silence all at once, but fewer people choosing you, fewer developers building for you, fewer headlines treating you as the future, fewer young customers seeing you as relevant, fewer reasons for the ecosystem to wait. The strange part is that Nokia survived. The Nokia Corporation did not vanish. It moved deeper into telecommunications infrastructure, networks, patents, and enterprise technology. The consumer phone business was gone, but the company itself remained. That matters because this is not a simple bankruptcy story. It is a story about identity loss. Nokia did not lose all value. It lost the role it had played in people's lives. The company that had once been the object in your hand became a company behind networks and infrastructure. That is not failure in a financial sense, but culturally it was a fall. So, what actually destroyed Nokia's phone empire? Not one mistake. A system mismatch. Nokia's old system was built around hardware excellence, product variety, manufacturing scale, operator relationships, and global distribution. The new smartphone system was built around software experience, app ecosystems, developer momentum, integrated services, touch interfaces, and platform identity. Nokia's strengths did not become useless. They became insufficient. That is the key. Reliability still mattered. Battery life still mattered. Hardware still mattered. Distribution still mattered. Price still mattered. But the center of value moved. The phone was no longer judged mainly as a phone. It was judged as a gateway to apps, a gateway to the internet, a gateway to services, a gateway to identity, a gateway to social life, a gateway to future updates. Nokia had mastered the object. Apple and Android mastered the gateway. That difference explains why the fall felt so sudden. From the outside, Nokia looked unbeatable because it had the visible advantages: brand, market share, devices, stores, carriers, factories. But the invisible advantage was moving elsewhere. Developer attention, operating system quality, touch interaction, app stores, cloud services, design coherence, user expectations. These were harder to see in the old metrics. A company can look strong on unit volume while losing the future. That is exactly what happened. The old numbers told Nokia it was still huge. The new behavior told the market Nokia was becoming old. And when behavior changes before the numbers fully collapse, great companies often react too slowly, because internally the old business can still defend itself. Feature phones still sell. Emerging markets still buy. Operators still take meetings. Factories still run. Revenue still comes in. Managers can still point to scale. But the future is not always where the revenue is today. Sometimes the future is where the developers are going. Sometimes it is where the best users are changing habits. Sometimes it is where the product experience resets expectations. Sometimes it is where a new ecosystem makes the old feature list irrelevant. That is what the iPhone and Android did. They did not simply take Nokia sales. They changed the criteria by which phones were judged. A Nokia could be durable and still feel outdated. A Nokia could have a good camera and still lack the apps people wanted. A Nokia could have strong hardware and still feel less modern. A Nokia could have global distribution and still lack ecosystem gravity. That is why Nokia's fall is more interesting than a simple disruption story. The company saw much of the future. It just could not reorganize itself around it fast enough. That is often worse than ignorance. If you do not see the future, you are blind. If you see it but cannot move, you are trapped. Nokia was trapped by its own scale, its own platform complexity, its own old success, and the fear of destroying what still worked. Symbian still had users. Feature phones still made money. Operators still mattered. Emerging markets still needed affordable devices. Nokia's brand still had power. Walking away from that was not easy. But the market was walking away anyway. This is the cruel logic of disruption. The incumbent waits because the old business is still valuable. The challenger moves because it has less to protect. By the time the incumbent is ready to jump, the new ecosystem may already have locked in users, developers, partners, and expectations. That was Nokia's problem. The company tried to jump from a burning platform, but it landed on another platform that was not strong enough to carry it. Windows Phone was not a meaningless choice. But it was a late choice, and late ecosystems are brutal. They need developers before users arrive. They need users before developers invest. They need apps before customers trust them. They need customers before carriers push them. They need momentum before the market believes. That loop is hard to start. Apple had premium desire. Android had openness and manufacturer scale. Windows Phone had differentiation, but not enough gravity. Nokia had once been the company everyone followed. Now, it was waiting for Microsoft's platform to become relevant. That was a profound loss of control. In the old era, Nokia controlled its destiny through hardware, brand, distribution, and its own software stack. In the Windows Phone era, Nokia's future depended on another company's operating system, developer ecosystem, app store, and strategic priorities. For a company that once ruled phones, that was not just a partnership. It was surrendering the center. And once the center was gone, the sale to Microsoft became less shocking. It was the final recognition that Nokia could no longer win the smartphone war on its own terms. The final lesson is not that Nokia should have copied Apple earlier. That is too simple. Copying the iPhone would not automatically have saved Nokia. The deeper lesson is that the smartphone was not a phone with a bigger screen. It was a new computing platform. And platform shifts punish companies that mistake product leadership for ecosystem leadership. Nokia had product leadership. Apple and Android built ecosystem leadership. That is why the old king fell. The story of Nokia is not about stupidity. It is about being optimized for a world that ended. Nokia knew how to build phones for a planet where the phone was a durable communication tool. Then the phone became a software surface for everything: work, music, maps, games, photography, social life, payments, identity, search, video, transportation, memory. The device became less important than the world inside the device. Nokia had spent years making the outside trustworthy. The new market wanted the inside to be alive. That is how Nokia ruled phones, then lost smartphones. Not because its old strengths were fake, because they were real. And that is what made them dangerous. Reliability taught Nokia that hardware trust was enough. Scale taught Nokia that distribution could protect it. Market share taught Nokia that leadership would continue. Symbian taught Nokia that owning a smartphone platform meant owning the future. Carrier relationships taught Nokia that the route to customers still ran through old channels. Each lesson made sense in the world Nokia dominated. Each lesson became incomplete in the world that replaced it. By the time Nokia understood that the battle was no longer devices but ecosystems, Apple and Android had already changed the battlefield. The king still had factories. The king still had engineers. The king still had loyal customers. But the kingdom had moved. That is the system-level lesson. A company can be loved and still lose. It can be technically capable and still fall behind. It can see the future and still fail to reorganize around it. It can dominate a market and still misunderstand what that market is becoming. Nokia's ringtone once felt like the sound of the mobile age. Then the age changed its sound. It became the sound of app notifications, touchscreen keyboards, software updates, camera shutters, social feeds, and ecosystems that kept pulling users back. Nokia did not disappear from technology, but it disappeared from the emotional center of the phone. And for a company that once put the first personal digital device into millions of hands, that was the real fall. The world did not stop buying phones. It simply stopped buying Nokia's definition of what a phone should be. That is how Nokia lost the smartphone war. It won the old mobile world so completely that for a moment it looked impossible to replace. Then the phone stopped being a phone. And Nokia, the company that had ruled the pocket, discovered that the future was not in the device itself. It was in everything the device connected to.